Now, hear us out on this one. How bizarre would it have been if the first ever third-person cover shooter was not in fact Western-made, but created by a small Japanese team more famous for the Dynasty Warriors franchise? It sounds like something we've pulled from thin air, but it's actually closer to the truth. Operation Winback, known simply as Winback outside of Europe and Australia, was indeed the earliest form of cover shooter as we know the subgenre today. You play as Jean-Luc, member of a counter-terrorist unit known as SCAT, who are as inept as they are unfortunately named. On a mission to stop the Crying Lion's terrorist cell from nuking the Earth with deadly satellite laser beams, members of the group initiate the titular Operation Winback, but as you'd expect, are slowly whittled down, the raid style, until just a few are left. It's a bare-bones narrative, but as an early cover shooter, it never had to be anything else. Winback is a unique beast, even within the infamously limited confines of the subgenre it helped create. It plays like a charming cross between Metal Gear Solid and Time Crisis. While most of the time there isn't a time limit to speak of, the rapid pace at which you'll move through the stages, ducking and dashing between cover spots, is quite reminiscent of Namco's classic arcade shooter. In addition to this, you'll be sneaking around and snooping out the best vantage points to best dispatch any hapless terrorists you come across. The levels themselves are all based around the headquarters of the Crying Lions. Starting on the outskirts of the base in wide outdoor areas, you'll eventually make your way inside the base where the game can occasionally become a literal corridor shooter. The level design and progression was reminiscent of Resident Evil 4. You were led primarily along one path with the occasional branch in which to explore, but you were also covering old ground a few times as you backtrack to pick up health kits, insert keys into doors, throw switches, and whatnot. Unlike Resident Evil 4, however, the level design in Winback is certainly nothing special, comprised largely of cramped corridors, sewers, and office spaces. Thankfully, it was the cover shooting mechanics where Operation Winback stood out from the imitators. You know when you were a kid and you would run around the house forming your hands into a pistol shape and peeking around corners looking for imaginary enemies? Yeah, well, Winback reminds us a lot of that. As Jean-Luc, you'd run between every piece of cover you could find, poking out to shoot the baddies as they appeared. Initially, you had 3 weapons: a handgun with unlimited ammo, a submachine gun, and a powerful shotgun that fired 3 rounds at once. While the latter 2 certainly weren't useless, the handgun was powerful enough that it was pretty much what you'd be using most of the time. There was also the occasional C4 pickups, but they were only particularly useful in certain situations, where they could admittedly save you a ton of trouble. Similarly to games like Resident Evil 4 and the Rainbow Six series, Jean-Luc's weapons were fitted with a laser sight to aid you with aiming. However, you were mostly relying on the game's auto-targeting feature to quickly kill your terrorist foes. Manual aiming, by contrast, was a pain in the butt. Aiming this way was very stiff and robotic, and compared to the smoother aiming of the later Resident Evil 4, it was completely laughable. There were times when you'd want to manual aim for an insta-kill headshot, in addition to the times when manual aiming was a necessity, but it was often easier to just unload your clip on enemies using auto-targeting. So with all its flaws, is Winback still worth playing today? Oh, absolutely. The emphasis on cover shooting and the feeling of never quite knowing what's going to be around the next corner created a level of tension the genre has seldom seen in a while. Winback was not only a hidden gem, it was also incredibly influential. Similar cover mechanics were adopted for use in Metal Gear Solid 2, and the game has since gone on to inspire the likes of Shinji Mikami's magnum opus, as well as Epic's Gears of War. So hats off to you, Omega Force. You get a lot of stick for making tons of Dynasty Warrior games, but when it comes down to it, you're a great little studio capable of amazing things.